Don't miss our tips and tactics on the new Death Guard Codex.
Spiky bits.
Welcome back, everybody. A lot of excitement out there on the new Death Guard Codex as everyone seems to universally like the look of these new guys, and of course Mortarion himself as well. Now, we've seen lots of previews for this book on the internet, on YouTube, on videos. Everybody seems to have their hands on the book and lots to say on it, you know, from points cost breakdowns to, you know, what's good and what's not good and what you should play and all that sort of stuff. But hey, at the end of the day, you know, we've been doing this for 5-6 years, breaking down all these rule books. I like to think we've become exceedingly good at it. So I don't mind giving you my thoughts. Now, we're going to probably not be as in-depth. Like, I'm not going to go through and be like, okay, well, this point changed here and this point changed here and all that stuff, because we've seen it ad nauseum. I've posted up a million times already on the site about it. So if you want specific breakdowns, that information is out there, whether it's in somebody else's video or perhaps, you know, on spikybits.com itself. Here's the breakdown of everything in this book, which you've probably already seen already as well. But just real quick, just to throw it out there, there's 33 new data sheets, or 33 data sheets in this book. We're only going to go over some of the new stuff, some of the psychic powers, a couple of the relics, some of the stratagems, some stuff I think is important. Overall, I think there's 2 solid ways to play Death Guard, which you pretty much have to gear the whole army around playing it that certain way. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff in here that can port over. I mean, obviously you can put Mortarion in any list out there, and he's good. You know, with a little bit of protection. You know, there's all sorts of crazy stuff out there. You can literally play, you know, 3-4 Lords of War in its own detachment and do quite fine with it, you know. So don't let anybody tell you how to hobby or, you know, anything like that, because there's nothing wrong with just picking up Mortarion and throwing him with Magnus and, you know, I don't know, maybe a Night Titan or maybe a huge Forge-rolled big baddie or something and running at some people. You know, that's always fun. Same thing on the Imperial side, but we're not really talk about that quite as much. Now there's you got 6 Warlord traits in here, 14 stratagems. 6 of them I think are ported over from the Chaos decks with a specific Death Guard flair. 8 of them I think are new. It could be vice versa, I forget. It doesn't really matter. We're not going to cover them all. You've probably already seen them, but we're going to give you our thoughts on how they work with the rest of the army and things like that. So you also got some tactical objectives in here. We know the new Contagion Psychic Discipline, of course, Relics Decay, 6 artifacts that go in here, and of course, you know, there's a stratagem where you pay 1 command point or 3 command points, and then you can get extra relics. But as long as you take a Death Guard detachment itself, you're going to get 1 free relic to throw in a character. And obviously, if you know, you're not allowed to buff like Mortarion or Typhus or something like that, but chances are that you're going to take another character, so you're going to want to protect them in some sort of way, and that's where the relic section will come in. Now, overall, special rules, we see Death of the False Emperor coming back. I personally forget to do it when we're doing battle reports and stuff. It's very difficult to remember every little rule. You almost need a little mini checklist these days. But don't forget, on your rolls of 6s, causes extra attacks, but they can't blow up and cause more attacks themselves. Disgusting Resilience, ported over from the Index, of course. It's basically a Feel No Pain roll on a 5 or a 6. Demons still have it for Nurgle. Anybody with keyword Nurgle Demon also has it. Remember, Mortarion is a keyword Nurgle Demon as well, so you're going to see where some of the stuff out of the Index Demons affects Mortarion. Some folks have been overlooking that, and that might be folly to do, because he can actually get some heals in that regard, which is pretty cool. Demonic Ritual, that's for bringing in some of the units in here like Plague Bearers or Nurglings, because if you want to take a Death Guard detachment specifically that is Death Guard keyword, you cannot take the Nurglings and you cannot take the Plague Bearers in it, because then now you can't use, now you're not battle forged or detachment wise, so you can't take those stratagems and things like that if you make the mistake of doing that and putting them all into one unit, or perhaps, you know, you don't want to take something out of the demon book itself. So you can summon them in with reinforcement points if you want to. I don't think that's the best way to go, and we're going to talk about that as we break it down. I think the best way to go is to take a dedicated chaos, not necessarily even demons. You could take a chaos detachment along with a Death Guard detachment of whichever, you know, just kind of go with it, kind of get the units you want, and then see how they fill in with the detachment list itself, and see how many command points you want, because one of the keys, actually the keys to both of these lists that I'm going to talk about, is probably having a lot of command points. So That being said, you get the Plague Bears, you put them out in front of your lines, and perhaps both of these variants of lists that we're going to touch on a little bit in a little bit, and I think that's probably the way to go. But we will touch on that later. But you do have the option to summon those units in via Demonic Ritual. Again, I don't think it's the way to go, but the option is there. Plague Weapons, of course, reroll to wounds on ones, but you're going to see that Mortarion is going to allow you to reroll all of that if you are within 7 inches of him. A couple of units we're gonna touch on, but I don't want to quite get to that yet. Let's go. First off, if you're wondering about a lot of points changes and things, and you haven't seen the actual pages themselves, well, here they are right here. Pause the video, write it down, and check your points, because here's all the points values for the book right here. And there are some changes, but like I said, it's not going to be the focus of this video and this tips and tactics. We're just going to kind of talk about some of the new stuff and kind of go from there. We'll talk about some of the disciplines. We'll talk about some of the relics. Personally, I think the only relic, well, there might be 2 in here that's really worth talking about that you're going to see kind of be out there, is the plate, which gives the character a save of a 2-up. And of course, on a 4-up, the unit that inflicted the wound suffers a mortal wound after all its attacks have been resolved. So you can repose the attack back to it, causing a mortal wound, and that's what a lot of the overlapping skills and the overlapping abilities of some of these units and some of these stratagems and things are all about in the Death Guard. So it's a pretty fun little jovial list, and Death Guard in general, both lists that I think are going to be good and you're going to see on the tabletop tend to play like the fluff kind of paints them. So that's really cool to see, is we see a lot of these books coming out and they play very fluffily. Of course, you can always take the soup lists that are the top end tables, on the competitive scene and things like that. But let's face it, that's the top of the hobby pyramid. A lot of us folks are not there. I personally don't want to be there. It's just all sorts of headaches in and of itself. That I've been there, I've done that, and it's time to just have fun and hobby, in my opinion here. Also, you can have the Fulgaris Helm, which increases the range of any aura abilities on its data sheet, which you can give to some of these guys to extend out the abilities and things. Is it necessary? Probably not. Is it worth taking command points for? Depends on how many command points you have, but these are probably 2 that you might want to think about working into your list. Other than that, I don't think the other ones are probably even worth mentioning at this point. Stratagems, we're going to talk ad nauseum about those, because those are some of the linchpins of some of these combos and some of these overlapping auras and abilities and things that are out there. And let's see, we will talk about, well, let's just go ahead and talk about the Psyche powers too. I think they're all worth mentioning. In this book here, you've got Miasma bringing it back. You got Gifted Contagion bringing it back, and this is pretty huge. Gifted Contagion is pretty dope. Casting value of 7, 18-inch range. Roll a d3, consult the table below. The unit suffers until the start of your next Psyche phase, whatever the effect is here. Now, do I like it, but I don't like it because it's random. However, all of these are pretty good. Neg 1 attack, neg 1 strength, and neg 1 toughness. So there is a potential that your targets will not be swinging back very, very hard against you. It'll be easier to wound them, and you're going to see, but there's already some effects out there, like Mortarion's effect, that minuses toughness already to things. So it's situational. If you have some warp charge, it might be worth doing. However, I don't think this is going to make a huge splash out there. Miasma is pretty good. Select a visible Death Guard unit with an 18 until the start of your next Psyche phase. Your opponent must subtract 1 from all hit rolls for that target unit. Key here is friendly Death Guard. Will not work with Nurgle Demons, regardless if they're the ones in this book or ones you port over from Chaos Demons. It just won't work. Has to be friendly Death Guard. Plague Wind, it's just shooting. That's pretty good. Suffering mortal wound for 6 for every model in the unit. Casting value of 5. Blades of Putrefaction is probably worth more than a cursory look. What that's going to do is allow you to get +1 to all your wound rolls in the fight phase. Furthermore, any wound rolls of 7 made for that unit in the fight phase with a melee weapon, a melee plague weapon, any variety, inflict a mortal wound on the target in addition to any other damage. So what this says is +1 to wound, any wound rolls of 7 will get you a mortal wound. Again, overlapping mortal wounds, because we all know that there's the Veterans of the Long War stratagem that gives you another +1 to wound. So combo that Psyche power with a stratagem and your +2 to wound, which means any rolls of 5 technically are going to be causing mortal wounds from attacks with plague weapons in the fight subphase. So it's a very specific kind of thing. Only works with Death Guard characters. Death Guard keyword. It's just something to keep in mind. +1 strength and +1 toughness to friendly Death Guard infantry squads might be worth taking. Worth more than a cursory look. Could be situational, but when you're setting up your army, you might want to think about it. And Curse of the Leper. Roll 7 dice. The closest visible enemy unit within 14 suffers a mortal wound for each roll that exceeds its toughness characteristic. Again, situational. Probably won't see that as much. I think the real winners here that you're definitely going to see is Miasma to some point. Blades, definitely. Vitality, perhaps. But definitely keep these in mind right here when you are playing with the Death Guard. Now let's go over some units real quick that I think are key to talk about. New units are actually, and pretty much just Typhus at this point. Demon Prince of Nurgle is in this book. It is a demon. It is Nurgle, and most importantly is its keyword Death Guard. So it's different from the one that comes in the Demon book, okay? But, that being said, it will benefit from the reroll to the Disgustingly Resilient that you can get from the Plague Surgeon, which is kind of cool, but remember that aura only works out to 3 inches. The thing about this guy is here, he's pretty much exactly the same as the one in the Demon book. You can take the Malefic Talons, which I think overall is probably better average-wise. You can get wings, he can fly, all the good stuff that you've come to expect. Now, do I think you should take the Demon Prince of Nurgle out of this book? I don't think you should. But you can, and this is the only demon in this book that does this, well, besides Mortarion, of course, you can include him as part of your Death Guard detachment, therefore getting all these great abilities in here and being able to use your stratagems and things like that. However, I don't think that juice is worth the squeeze, personally. I think having access to the Nurgle Discipline out of the Demon book with all the additional abilities is probably a little bit better, because what this is going to do, you just select Fleshy Abundance, Warp Charge of 5. If manifested, select a friendly Nurgle Demon unit within 18 of the Psyker. That unit recovers D3 wounds lost earlier in the battle. So remember what I said earlier. Mortarion is a Nurgle Demon, so theoretically you could heal Mortarion for D3 wounds. You could also heal other Demon Princes of the same caliber and keyword, of course, as well. There's also a stratagem that allows you to just get back some wounds. However, it is a little pricey, and I believe it's Grandfather's Blessing. We'll take a look at it right here. Use the stratagem in your movement phase. Select a Death Guard infantry unit. One model in that unit regains D3 lost wounds. If there are no wounded models in a unit, a single model in that unit was slain earlier in a battle is returned to the unit with a single wound remaining. So that's only going to work for infantry, which is fine because you can use it for some of your characters and things, or maybe more importantly, Death Shroud. You lose a whole Death Shroud from a 2-up, or remember they have 2 wounds, then perhaps you want to pop that off. Seems pretty good. Good little combo right there. Typhus actually went up in points to 175. I think he was like 164 before that. Everything else appears to be the same. Lord of Contagion, not really worth talking about. Can't take a sorcerer on jump pack, can't take a sorcerer on bike or anything like that. At least with the Death Guard keyword, you can of course take a Chaos Detachment, get access to all those great powers like Warp Time and things, and give people extra movement, or perhaps get the options you want. However, they will not have Nurgle keyword, but you could put those into a Chaos other detachment, a Chaos Soup detachment, along with some of these demons, and get a lot of cool value as far as it goes in your force organization there. Malignant Plaguecaster, not really worth talking about. Plague Marines, perhaps the linchpin of one of the lists that's out there that people are talking about. We've talked about it in a Long War podcast. Really, none of these options matter when it comes to what's going on and why they may be worth taking. The cool thing about them is that they have Blight Grenades, and Blight Grenades are actually way better than a lot of us initially expected or suspected, I guess at that point. So Blight Grenades are a 6-inch range grenade, D6 shots at strength 3 AP dash, and they do 1 damage. They are plague weapons, so you get to reroll 1s to wound, of course. And if you're within 7 inches of Mortarion, well, hey, guess what? You get to reroll everything. Pretty good. Now, you're going to see a combo that comes up here that's gonna bring how awesome this is into play very quickly. Now, other stat-wise, you know, Plague Marines aren't new. We've been talking about these since the Dark Imperium box came out. They're 1 wound models with toughness 5, strength 4. They have a 3-up save. So they're not really good for holding a line per se unless you augment them or protect them with some overlapping abilities and perhaps some stratagems. So keep this in mind. Plague Marines, pretty good. Cultist Pox Walkers, not really super worth talking about, although I would like to make the point that Pox Walkers, a lot of people are running Pox Walkers in their list to screen. I personally think Plague Bearers are better. You can take these guys in a squad of 30. They are 1 point more, and this is assuming that you're not taking them out of here, you're taking them out of the Demon Book, because then you can just set them up on the table. If you take them out of here and you put them in your list, you have to summon them via the ritual because they are not keyword Death Guard. So keep that in mind. If you put them in a Death Guard list, then it's just the whole thing. I guess you could set them up on the table, but then you would lose your Battleforge status for Death Guard, which seems kind of silly in and of itself. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to bring them out. Well, long story short, there's a couple different ways to do it. You can set them up on the table, or you can do the Demonic Ritual, but I don't think any of that's worth it. Just take them out of the Demon Book. They're exactly the same points. But remember, these guys have a built-in Cloud of Flies ability. When they're over unit size of 20, they're neg 1 to hit. Their plague weapons actually always reroll, or excuse me, their plague swords always reroll to wounds, regardless of Mortarion or regardless of plague ability, whatever. They're always rerolling. Now, here's the key, well, maybe not the key, but something that's probably worth thinking about is the demonic icon. When you roll a 1, just a 1, when taking a morale test, which that's going to be 1 in 6 times, right? Then you get D6 slain models back. Now, it might not always be worth taking unless you're taking a big block of 30 of them, in which case I think it's definitely worth the 15, even the 25 points. I forget exactly how much it costs, but it's definitely worth it when you're taking, you know, when one of them costs 7 points right there. A block of these with some augments, being able to well, you can't exactly buff them up in this kind of list, but there's some other demon abilities and overlapping things that allows them to be a little bit more resilient, but this isn't the video for that one right there. Nurglings, of course, are in here too. Now, big 4 new units right here. Noxious Blightbringer. This guy is good because, let's see, which one is this? Oh, no, not this guy. I don't like this guy. Nope, don't like that guy. That's not him. Foul Blightspawn, I do like. He gets you an upgrade grenade that instead of a grenade type of 1d6, it becomes 2d6. But maybe more importantly is he has this revolting stench, so he can kind of sit on your line and prevent you getting assaulted and them swinging first with anybody that hits your lines or hits your units within 7-inch radius of him, 14-inch diameter. He is 77 points. It's got some decent abilities and stuff right here as far as that goes, but if you keep having an issue where you get run up on and get smashed, well, maybe this guy might be worth putting in your army. I don't think he's worth including into the list I'm going to talk about here, but definitely something to keep in mind. The Biologist Putrefier seems to be pretty good for a lot of different reasons. Remember, we were talking about the Blight Grenades. Well, this guy has a nifty ability called Blight Racks, which allows you to increase the strength and damage characteristic of all Blight Grenades carried by friendly Death Guard units by 1 while they are within 3 inches of any of these characters. In addition, while a unit is within 6 inches of this model, each wound roll of 6 made when attacking with a Blight Grenade inflicts a mortal wound on the target in addition to any other damage. So, that Blight Grenade that has D6 attacks and was strength 3 with 1 damage is now strength 4 and causes 2 damage if it gets through. Pretty cool. In addition to that, and he rolls a 6 to wound, remember, you get to re-roll 1s because it is a plague weapon inherently, allow you to re-roll to wound. So if you roll a 1, chances are you might roll into a 6 because that's literally the average, a 1 and a 6 or a 3 and a 4 on 2d6. Well, if you roll a 1, you might roll into a 6, which is pretty good. Now, that being said, remember, we do have that nifty stratagem called Veterans of the Long War, which allow you to adjust your wound by another +1. So now you're +2 to wounding, so you're causing mortal wounds on a 5-up. A squad of, say, 20 Plague Bearers, or excuse me, 20 Death Guard Plague Marines now can cause mortal wounds on a 5-up. But wait, there's more. Here's the thing. There's a stratagem called Blight Bombardment. For only 1 command point, you can use this stratagem before a friendly Death Guard unit shoots or fires Overwatch. When resolving that unit shot, every model in the unit that is equipped with a Blight Grenade can throw one, instead of only 1 model in the entire unit being able to do so. That is a force multiplier of untold proportions for only 1 command point, because now for 1 command point, your block of 20 Plague Marines is throwing, each one of them is throwing D6 grenades on average. That's 4, we'll say. That's 80 grenades at something, causing mortal wounds, just mortal wounds, in addition to any other damage on a 5 or a 6 if you combo this with the Veterans of the Long War. So 2 command points, well, I don't have to tell you the math, on 80 shots rolling to hit on a 3 or better, right? And then from there, any 5s or 6s to wound, reroll 1s, or if you're in range of Mortarion, reroll any of those that miss. So you're talking maybe your 3s, maybe your 2s, maybe your 1s. Half of those are getting re-rolled into potentially 5s or 6s that are mortal wounds that are very hard to prevent to anything, any unit in the game. Of course, Disgusting Resilience does deflect them, but let's face it, not everybody has those. So this is a huge combo for the Plague Marines. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, that sounds cool, but at the end of the day, they're just 20 Space Marines. Why do I even care? 20 Space Marines is going to get their faces rocked off by just about anything out there. Hey, have you seen the competitive meta? Sure, I have. I'll be honest, they do. 20 Marines, even if they're toughness 5, aren't, the bee's knees, and their survivability, well, marginal at best. However, there is another thing to consider, and that is the third stratagem here, called the Cloud of Flies. Now, you have to do this during your movement phase, so if you don't get to go first, you're not going to get it off. So theoretically, somebody would still be able to target your block of 20 dudes. Until the start of your next movement phase, enemy models can only shoot this unit if it is the closest visible target. So what that does is, it turns your block of 20 Plague Marines into essentially characters for targeting purpose. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, what the heck would I put in front of it to deflect all that fire and still survive? Well, Pox Walkers may or may not do it, depending on how you protect them with other stratagems or perhaps other interlapping abilities. I would like to suggest, perhaps, you throw the Plague Marines in front of them. A big block of 30, maybe a little block of 10 to wrap around the sides, maybe 2 little blocks of 10 to wrap around the sides, or maybe just 2 squads of 30. Remember, they're 8 points each, 240 for 30. Plus a standard, which I can't remember right offhand, 15, 25 points, whatever. It's probably totally worth it. So you're up, around, say, the 255, 260 point range. These guys are very difficult to deal with. A model with a 5-up invulnerable, a 5-up disgustingly resilient, which can't be modified by anything in this book, anything Death Guard whatsoever, so don't try it. There's no way to do it as far as I can tell. I'm pretty sure it can't be done. These abilities of the Plague Marines and the Death Guard do not interact with the Nurgle Demons, except for, of course, like I said, the Demon Prince in the front of the book, and Mortarion, of course, because they both have keyword Death Guard. Alright, so, that being said, you're neg 1 to hit these guys as long as they're over 20, and you can always use cover and those other things to your advantage to allow you to have a better save, perhaps. But at the end of the day, a 5-up invulnerable and a 5-up disgustingly resilient save, do the math on that. Just fraction it out. 5-up, that's what? 5, 6, right? 5, 6. You've got it twice right there. Or let's just do it backwards. What would let you fail? I guess that's what? 2, 6, right? 2, 6. So on 2, 6, you would fail. I'm pretty sure the math on that is pretty good. It ends up just being a straight up 4-up save, but you have to pass twice. And you do have to pass it twice. So, I mean, theoretically, it is what it is. I'm telling you, put it on the tabletop. It is very resilient. And then, of course, protect your line behind it until you get into range with those Blight Grenades. those Blight Grenades are going to do work. And behind it, you have, of course, the rest of these supporting cast of characters, along with Mortarion, who Mortarion can run down a flank and hold his own all day, every day. If you have some Demon Princes of Nurgle, perhaps, which end up, being kind of affordable points-wise in there as well, they can fly combat air patrol on another flank. They can also heal Mortarion, perhaps, or heal themselves. But remember, they can, your enemy can always dispel them as well. So that's the Biologist Putrefier, of course. He does blow up if he dies. He's 74 points. You might want to take 2 of them so they just don't snipe him out, and now your Blight Grenades are nothing, which you've built your list around. Plague Surgeon is pretty good. He is 59 points ish, and he allows you to reroll 1s for your disgusting resilient rolls for Death Guard infantry models within 3 inches. So here's the thing. Not going to work with the demons, like we said, but actually forgot to look to see if they have this ability. Oh, they do. So the Plague Marines do have this ability. So they are going to be 3 up, and they are going to be 5 up to shrug off things. And then if you have the Plague Surgeon in here as well, which you may or may not need, because theoretically they should not be getting targeted unless something really, really bad happened, and then it's usually downhill from there. But he can still buff up Mortarion and other characters in there as well that might get targeted if something lands in your backfield. But again, that's why you have the Plague Marine Bubble Wraps. Something else fun that might be cool to put in either versions of the list that we're going to talk about, we're about to get to the Death Shroud, is the Tallyman. He's gonna do you good in Assault right here. It's going to give you reroll failed hit rolls in the fight phase for friendly Death Guard. But maybe more importantly is that anytime you spend any amount of command points, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, roll 2d6. If you roll a 7, you get those command points back. Now, he's 60 points. Is he worth taking? Maybe. For 60 points, getting some command points back, seeing as how you can't buy them with points, might be worth it if you have a few floating points right there. Now, another one of the lists out there that seems to be rather popular is everybody seems to be smitten with the Death Shroud Terminators. Maybe not so much their actual real money price value, but they seem to be very smitten with the idea of taking these guys to protect Mortarion or whatever. Any character in general they have to intercept the shots coming in. Roll a dice each time a friendly Death Guard character is hit by a ranged or melee weapon while he is within 3 inches of this unit. On a 2-up, one of the Death Shroud intercepts the hit. The character is not hit by that attack, but this unit instead. So it's a straight intercept. It always happens on a 2-up, and it goes against them. Now, some cool abilities here that you can do. Obviously, you could probably do the Cloud of Flies on these guys if you wanted to, so they can't be targeted normally by somebody else as long as there's something in front of them. I'm not going to worry too much about either of these right here. You will be able to heal them with one of the stratagems, Nurgle's Rot, but again, it's 3 command points, but it would give you a whole 75-point Terminator back if you happen to actually lose one. They are disgustingly resilient, so if you have the Plague Surgeon in here, your 5-ups reroll 1, so you have a 2-up save, 4-up invulnerable, right? 5, 6 reroll 1s. So if you do the math on that, that's actually pretty resilient as well. However, it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to mix the abilities that you're going to need to have all these stratagems to do both the grenade trick and perhaps keep these guys alive to protect Mortarion. Mortarion is actually pretty good, but if you do the points cost on him, I mean, he's like 470, he's 2 wounds more than Magnus, but Magnus, basically, you always assume Magnus costs more than he does because of the Changeling, which, of course, augments his abilities as well, so it's almost like you always are spending an extra 100 points. Do you spend the extra 225 to get 3 of these Death Shroud Terminators to try to interface with Mortarion and protect him when they have such different movement speeds? It's hard to say. Maybe you throw these guys in the back just in case, and you do the Plague Marine trick, and then just kind of keep walking up and marching up and marching up and marching up. Now, another thing you can do to protect the Death Shroud Terminators, and we're not going to touch on Blight Lords, although I think for their price at 45 stock, they are definitely worth taking in a more generalized combined arms kind of force. But either of these 2 lists, they kind of just don't fit into, so we're going to kind of skip over them, but definitely look at these guys. I think points value, maybe perhaps money value, they're also pretty good as well. Hellbrute, Beast of Nurgle, where are they? So that brings me to the myopic Blight Hauler. 142 points as shown here with a missile launcher, multi-melter, bottle spurt, and gnashing maw. What this does is it protects you and allows you to gain the benefits of being in cover normally, which is a really interesting kind of sort of thing. Now, so that's basically you get +1 to your save. Now these guys have a 2-up save, so +1 to the 2-up, you can't do anything on a 1 in 40k, but if there's a minus to their save or something and now you have a +1, that could augment that, but that really only affects heavy firepower. But having these guys in here would allow you to interface. Remember, it's Death Guard infantry, so it's not going to allow you to interface with any Plague Bearers or anything like that, but it's going to allow you to interface with some of the characters and such, not necessarily Mortarion, but definitely Pox Walkers. If you go the Pox Walker route, you might want this guy. Now, he's 142, and his other new kit, the Plague Burst Crawler, is only 140, but he's a little bit different, okay? So he gives you the Plague Burst Mortar, and the toughness and the strength and the wounds are a little bit different. So this thing's more of a light vehicle, which we saw in some of the pictures, and this thing's more of a heavy tank kind of vehicle with 2 Plague Spitters and the Plague Burst Mortar, and you have some options to switch out for things right here. Now, personally, I feel like at this point for 140 versus the 99-point Photed Bloat Drone, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this. I do like the Bloat Drone. I do like the Flesh Mower, +2 strength, -2 AP, 2 damage here, and it is a plague weapon. We have already talked ad nauseum about plague weapons and how you can augment them in this game. So your strength is going to be strength 8, so you're going to be wounding a lot of things at toughness 4 on a 2-up. It's going to be getting through. It's definitely going to be getting through, and those attacks are only 3, but it does get to make 6 additional attacks with this weapon. So you're going to be throwing 9 attacks if you select the Flesh Mower to be in there. Now, this is just to give you an idea of points. So this kind of augments your guys. This is more offensive, but this is more offensive too and has similar armaments, but not quite as tough. So do you want to spend the extra points and go with the Plague Burst Crawler, or do you want to stay with the Blight Hauler to try to augment your army? Well, that's really up to you, but those are kind of like the 3 options you have right there to select from and to provide that synergy for the rest of your army. So those are just kind of some ideas that you might want to look at. I think if you have the opportunity to take Typhus, you might not go wrong with them, but at the amount of points, I think you're going to run out of space really quick in a 2K kind of list. Now, I worked up a 2K list with some of the stuff we were talking about, to like 20 Plague Marines, 3 Nurgle Demon Princes, Mortarion, the Biologist Putrefier, 30 Plague Bears, 10 and 2 small squads of, or 30 and 2 small squads of 10, a couple of Malefic Lords, just cause. Those could get switched out for Biologist Putrefiers, of course, to allow you to still be able to do the grenade trick with the Death Guard guys. Now, you're probably like, are grenades really that strong? They are. That many attacks, and then being able to also remember switch and not use the grenade. So the whole time you're walking up, because of the tactics in here, at 18 inches, you're doing your rapid fire attacks. You can move and shoot heavy weapons, which really isn't a thing because there's not havocs in here or whatever. But it's something to keep in mind. And when you actually close the gap and you have those plague weapons, there's all sorts of abilities that we already showed you that you can use to augment those plague weapons and cause even more mortal wounds, especially in combat, with things like not even something that's caused command points. Blades of Putrefaction right there. Once the Death Guard Plague Marines actually close with something, well, they can do a whole lot of work, but so can the Plague Bearers themselves. So all of that added up, let's see, 2 Malefic Lords, 30 Plague Bearers, 10 Plague Bearers, 10 Plague Bearers, 3 Demon Princes flying around with psychic powers and talons, Mortarion, 2 Biologists, Putrefiers, and 20 Plague Marines. Was right at about 2,000 points with 7 command points. So that means that if you are trying to do that trick, the Putrid, or excuse me, not the Putrid Detonation, but the Blight Bombardment, the Cloud of Flies, the Nurgle's Rot to protect them, or excuse me, the Cloud of Flies to protect them, the Veterans of the Long War, and the Blight Bombardment when you are actually in range to chuck those grenades. You say this will probably happen twice, because you're going to try to protect them. This will probably go off at least once. That gives you 6 command points, or that's 4 command points right there that you're going to be accounted for. So that gives you 3 to kind of play around with, maybe do a reroll, maybe something like that. Or if you're lucky enough to get that off twice, I could see it going very well for you. Like I said, you can always heal some stuff as long as it's Death Guard infantry right there, if you want. Or you have the ability to Contagion Discipline and do the Blades of Putrefaction once you actually close with those bad boys and your Death Guard guys. So just some ideas out there. I didn't really point up the Death Shroud, but Death Shroud and Mortarion right there. You know, you're talking 225 plus 470. You know, you're already up around 700 points right there before you do anything else. So there's potential. There's definitely potential. Maybe you want to take another 225 and have even more wounds right there. We'll find out in the future how this all shakes out, but I can tell you right now, Death Guard are one of the most flavorful armies, playing exactly like they seem to act in the fluff and all the books and everything out there. So it's very cool to see. G-Dub keeping it real, coming on hot with what is a very themey and enjoyable codex, both from the read of the fluff and the way they laid out all of the rules in here and everything like that. So I hope we've given you some great ideas and touched on all the things that are important, not just for these 2 lists that we talked about, but also just the Death Guard in general. We didn't talk about Mortarion as such, but I think everybody out there is pretty much a Mortarion expert at this point. Remember, just a quick rundown of him. He has the ability that causes mortal wounds when you are in the fight phase. So you're going to roll for every unit around him. He may explode a bunch of them with mortal wounds. That is a real thing. There is also a stratagem that causes mortal wounds during the shooting phase. That's a once per game. What is that one? That is a good question, which one that is, but I forget exactly. It is one of these good ones. Gifts of Decay, nope. I must have had it out here. But Mortarion's got, like I said, lots of abilities. His Warlord trait allows all plague weapons to be completely re-rolled instead of just re-rolled on ones, which is their normal ability. What is that? Let's find out. Now I am vexed. Forgot what it is called. So much information to take in. Sometimes you know what the things do rather than what the things are called. Not Blight Bombardment. Okay, finally found it right in front of my face. Nurgle's Rot. That is the stratagem. That's the shooting phase one. Once per game on a 4-up. The unit being rolled for suffers D3 mortal wounds. So you roll a D6 for every unit within 7 of that particular Death Guard character. Another great command point stratagem, but it is 3. It is pricey. Again, a lot of these things need to be built into your list and your command point strategy to be used here. So there we go. There's my quick overview of a couple of things we might have not touched on. But again, I think we hit all the major points, gave you a couple list ideas. We're going to try tailoring the new tips and tactics video more towards this style. So I hope you like that. Please leave it in the comments below, or anything that we didn't touch on that you think is important. We'd love to hear it from you as well, or any questions you might have, anything we might be vague or confusing on, and we'll try to clean them up. We keep a very loose eye on the comments here on Spiky Bits. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed our video feature on the new Death Guard tips and tactics. Please subscribe to this channel and also turn on notifications so you can be the very first to like and comment on our videos here. And head on over to thelongwar.net. That's the home of the 40K battle reports for exclusive content, early access downloads, and now a brand new army list download section as well. Become a veteran of the Long War today.